If the market crashed tomorrow, would it cost you the retirement you worked your entire life for? I've helped hundreds of retirees face that exact fear. And the best way to defend yourself against a crash has nothing to do with picking the right investments. So in this video, I'll show you exactly what a market crash means for your retirement and the overlooked income strategy that helps retirees avoid selling investments at the worst possible time. To start, I'm going to show you how to make sure you don't run out of money if the market were to crash. This shows two investors who both retire with $1 million. Other than the first and last years of their retirements, both investors earn the exact same returns. Investor A has a 29% gain in the first year and an 18% drop in the last year. Investor B has the opposite, with the 18% drop happening in the first year and the 29% gain in the last. But even though the returns are almost exactly the same, Investor A finishes the period with over $2 million, while Investor B runs out of money. One small difference in timing was the difference between doubling your money and completely running out. So if you want to stop one market crash from sending you back to work, the key isn't to avoid the crash, it's to avoid a crash at the wrong time. But even if a crash hits at the worst possible time, it doesn't have to be the reason you run out of money. Let me show you how you can experience the same crash and still end up with over $1 million. Here's the same chart, but this time it only shows Investor B who ran out of money. Most retirees think that the only way to avoid this is to work longer or to pick better investments. But the real solution has nothing to do with either. Throughout the period, Investor B was selling investments to cover his expenses, and when you combine that with the early crash, it makes him run out of money. But this black line shows Investor C, who experiences those same returns but ends up with over $1 million at the end of the same period. So what did he do differently here? For the first 2 years, Investor C doesn't touch his investments. Instead of selling, he covers his spending using outside money. And because of this, his portfolio recovers much quicker and he finishes with over $1 million. So the key to stopping a market crash from being the reason you run out of money isn't trying to time the market or to work longer. It's to have another income source available that can keep you from selling investments during a downturn. But now that you know that, where does the money come from instead? To answer that, you first have to understand how most retirees think about where their spending comes from. When it's time to pay bills in retirement, most retirees assume they have two options: either spend their cash or pull from investments. So to avoid selling investments during a downturn, they feel like they need to keep a large buffer of cash on the sidelines. But this shows the typical breakdown of what most people have in retirement: some money sitting in cash, a significant balance in investments, and a house that is fully paid off or close to it. Yet when most retirees plan their retirement, they only focus on the assets that they can easily see and touch, cash and investments, and treat the value of their home like it doesn't exist. So the issue isn't that retirees don't have enough assets to protect themselves from a downturn. It's that they ignore one of their largest assets when they think about how to fund retirement. So instead of thinking you need to move a large portion of your investments into cash just in case the market drops, it's important to include the value of your home as part of the picture. But the problem with this is that net worth doesn't pay the bills. Liquid assets do. So the next question becomes, how can that value actually help protect you during a market downturn? Well, one option is to sell and downsize. It can free up cash, reduce monthly expenses, and simplify upkeep. But it comes with trade-offs. The value depends on the housing market, moving is expensive and stressful, and it can make hosting kids and grandkids much harder. And honestly, many people just like their home and don't want to leave. So while downsizing is an option, for most retirees, it's not the first one they want to rely on. But the good news is you don't have to sell your home to access its value. Let me show you a few ways you can tap into home equity while continuing to live there. To start, a home equity loan gives you a lump sum of cash up front and you start making payments right away, similar to a traditional loan. Most people use this when they want to borrow a specific amount for a specific purpose. A HELOC, or home equity line of credit, is a line of credit tied to your home. You don't take the money all at once. You draw from it only if you need to, and usually only pay interest on what you use. This option is about flexibility. You borrow only what you need when you need it. A cash-out refinance takes your existing mortgage and replaces it with a larger one. You get the difference in cash and make regular monthly payments on the new loan. Think about it like traditional refinancing, but with cash coming out at the same time. And for homeowners 62 and older, a reverse mortgage allows access to home equity without monthly loan payments. The loan is typically repaid later when the home is sold or you move out. The big difference between these options is when you get the money and when you have to pay it back, not whether you can stay in your home. So whether you plan to sell your home or stay put, what matters is knowing that if push comes to shove, you have options. And having those options is what gives retirees flexibility when markets aren't cooperating. But now that you know your options, How do you know which one actually helps when markets drop and you want to avoid selling your investments? This exact question was studied by retirement researcher Dr. Wade Pfau. He looked at different ways retirees use home equity and measured how well each strategy helped them avoid running out of money. Across the bottom is their retirement duration, and across the left is how likely they were not to run out of money. The black line represents what most retirees do. They completely ignore their home equity. Not surprisingly, this strategy had the lowest chance of making it through retirement with any money left. The next strategy was using home equity as a last resort, ignoring it until portfolio assets were already under pressure, then trying to borrow against the home. This was slightly better than ignoring it altogether, but in many scenarios, it was simply too late to make a meaningful difference. But the top performing strategy took a different approach. Instead of waiting, it set up access to home equity right at retirement, and then didn't use it unless it was actually needed. And this approach significantly outperformed both ignoring home equity altogether and waiting until things were already going wrong to try and access it. The key wasn't spending home equity early, it was having access to it early. And here's what makes this strategy so powerful. If the line of credit is open longer, it can lead to a larger amount available to borrow later on. And having access to that bigger pool of money can give retirees a bigger cushion to help avoid selling investments at the worst possible time. Now, this isn't advice to go open a line of credit tomorrow. There are a lot of factors that matter. Interest rates, your mortgage, your home value. But the important takeaway is this. Having a plan to access home equity before you need it can provide powerful downside protection. And when you know you have options, it can give you more confidence to spend and enjoy your money, instead of constantly second-guessing every decision and worrying what you'll do if the market crashes. So now you know that the key to surviving market crashes isn't predicting them. It's having access to other money so you're not being forced to sell investments, and the overlooked strategy you can use to do that. But even when retirees have the perfect strategy to defend against the next crash, they still struggle with one question. How do I build a plan to actually spend my money with confidence? Watch this next. I'll show you the simple spending strategy that helps retirees stop underspending and finally enjoy the retirement they save for.